Perfect. Now I'll start talking for real this time. Um, now that we have the recording going. Yeah, so um, filters in Tableau and in general are a great way to narrow down what data you're showing. It also is a great way for your users to interact with your views. Now, there are lots of different types of filters. As you can see from this slide, we have extract filters, data source filters, context filters, dimension filters, measure filters, and table calc filters. And while there are a lot of filters on this list, many of these filters are going to act very similarly. Um, there are some order of operations, as you can see on the right side of the slide. There are some things that interact with those filters differently, but how we use filters is kind of consistent across many of these types and the process to get there. So I'm going to share my screen for a few minutes and
All yours, girl.
if I perfect. Lovely. So I have a very simple bar chart here. We're looking at the default data set of world indicators and looking at it by year and our region. And we're looking at GDP. And as you can see from this visualization, there's a lot of information. There's a lot of bars. There's a lot of years. There's just a lot going on. So one way to help with the amount of data that we are digesting is using those filters to narrow down and focus in on specific pieces. For example, if I wanted to filter by year, I could drag my year up here to filters. I have a myriad of things that I can do with that filter. I'm just going to select years. We're going to make it easy on ourselves for now. And then I can deselect some of these. I'm going to just do 2010 to 2012 and deselect all these other years so that, and click OK, so that all I'm seeing are those 3 years. And I can look at those across my regions, and it's a little bit more digestible with the data that I have in the view. Now, you saw me as the author do that, and I went in and deselected those years, and now I have this output. And I could, when I share this out, not make any changes to that. And other people, when they look at this visualization, all they see is 2010, 2011, and 2012. I can also show this filter. So I right-clicked on year on filters and said show filter. And now this allows my end user to interact with this view as well. So instead of it just being something that I'm consuming as an end user, I am now able to interact and decide which of these years that I want to see. And I can deselect and reselect different years and decide how many years are going to be showing in my view. Now, dates are pretty cool in Tableau. Maybe many of you know this already, but there's many different ways that we can visualize dates. So instead of looking at this as a blue checkbox or these buckets of years, I can also, or I could instead, change this to our continuous year. And then I have a slider. So I'm just going to click OK, and I'm going to re-show my filter. And now I have this slider. And this, for me, is a little easier to use using that slider instead of checking and unchecking boxes. You can also type in values so that you can decide which ones are going to show in the view. There's lots of different customizations that you can make with this. You can also do relative date, range of dates, start date, end date. So it really depends on what kind of interactivity you want your end user to have when you add this to the view for them to use. You can also add multiple filters. So we have our year filter. We can also add our region filter. And I'm going to do this one a little bit differently. Instead of dragging and dropping to filters, I'm going to right click on region and say show filter. And that's going to add that field to filters and also add it over here. Now, anytime that you have multiple filters in your view, they are going to be and. They're going to work together as an and clause. So this is going to be Asia and these specific years. So that's kind of a basic level of our filters. You can customize these. They can look differently if you have a dimension filter like we have with region here, a discrete dimension. um, you are able to change how that looks and the functionality behind it. There's also some ways that you can make user experience a little bit easier by adding a apply button so that when they're selecting and deselecting, the view isn't completely disappearing. So as the author, you have to think about A, whether you want your users to interact with this view, and then B, how you want the users to interact with it. Sometimes you want to set a filter and not have that end user change it. And then in that case, you're going to do the very first thing I did where I just added the filter and didn't show the filter. Or you want your end user to interact with it. You want it to be an interactive view. And you can then have that end user decide. Now, there are situations where you can have both. In this situation, maybe I don't want certain countries to show, right? I can use that country region and say, I want to exclude the US and the UK. Click OK, and that's going to change my view. It's going to narrow down the amount of data that's in the view, and my end user can't interact with it. I can also, as we saw on that slide, I can change some of these filters to context. So if I right click on the filter and say add to context, that's going to change my filter gray. And what that does is it forces that filter to run first. So when this data loads, important when we are sharing this data out and other people are viewing it, when this data loads, UK and US will automatically be excluded, and these other two filters will only run on that excluded data or the data that doesn't include those two countries. This is a context filters are a great way to help with performance. The general rule of thumb is, you don't want to overuse them because they do have quite a bit of processing that happens behind the scenes. But if you have a filter like this where you are sure that maybe this whole view or a whole dashboard or a whole workbook needs to be filtered down prior to anything loading, a context filter is a really good way to do that.
Love it. Any
Yes.
questions from anyone else? This is a great
Yep.
overview of just understanding how filters work. They're super powerful to be able to narrow your data to just what you want to see and give control to your end users too. So
Yeah, it's a
do
great,
love
great
that.
spot for some questions if anybody has any.
All right.
Okay.
I
Sorry,
think that's
one
it.
question.
Yes,
Oh,
please.
great. Bring it on, Rosemary.
Um, so when would you use the context filter versus a filter at the data source?
Oh, that's a great
Great
question.
question.
Yeah, that's so good. Um, I generally, if I know that this entire data source needs to be filtered by something specific, um, actually, let me back up. data source filters and context filters kind of have two different uses for them. A data source filter could be something, if we go to the data source tab and we set up a filter here, this is a data source filter. This filters the data before it ever comes into Tableau. So you're already narrowing it down. You make this decision when you know that you are never going to need this data in this whole entire workbook, right? If you are looking at financial data just for the last year, you are going to filter that financial data before it ever gets into this workbook, and you're going to do that here. The end user can't interact with it. They can't change it. It's just there, right? You're limiting the amount of data, and you are, you know that this entire workbook, everything using this data source is not going to need that data at all. You can also, within a specific sheet, you can say apply to worksheets all using this data source. And the benefit to doing it this way and also showing the filter is that if my user interacts with this view and just filters to 2010, 2011, 2012, and then they go to another sheet, that other sheet will also be filtered that way. So that's really helpful on a dashboard when you want a centralized filter that is going to filter all of the views using that data source in that particular dashboard. Does that make sense from a data source filter perspective, the two different paths?
Yes,
Okay,
thank
great.
you.
And then you have your context filter. Now, if you are, and I said two reasons for context filter. I'm now, thinking there's kind of, well, there's definitely more, but three main ones maybe. I'm like, oh, I'll just keep thinking of more options. But a couple things. One is a context filter generally or can be for just one view specifically. So you want that view maybe has a lot of data coming in. You want to narrow down just that view, but not the entire data source. That will help with performance in that when that view loads, it will load with less data. That's kind of number one. Number two, is if you are looking at something like a top 10 or a top 5, and in this case, if we're looking at regions across years, and those regions repeat for each year, right? We have a region, we're getting a GDP for every region over every year. If I wanted to just see the top 2 countries or top 2 regions per year, I would have to set, um, and I wanted it, to be narrowed down, and I didn't want those countries to show up. I would need to filter by region country first, right? So that the Americas falls down to this level before I find that top 2 or that top 3. So when you want to kind of define the order of operations of those filters, and it especially is important when you're looking at a top filter, like top 10 or top 5 or whatever, when you want to control the order of operations, you can use that context filter.
And I do want to point out,
Please.
even though you may rearrange your filters on the filter shelf, it
Yeah.
does not care. It's going to filter
Yep.
context filters
It
first,
doesn't
dimensions
matter.
next, and then measures. Like it
Yep.
doesn't matter how you order it on the filter shelf, it will make those decisions based on those order of operations. So
Yep.
Jordan has shared a link to the presentation, and we have a link in that link of the presentation around the order of operations in Tableau. So that will be helpful for you all as well.
Yeah, and the third reason for that context filter, or the third kind of main thing, is talking when we talk about LODs, which we're going to talk
Mhm.
about next. So,
Why don't you just move right into LODs, Sarah?
that sounds
Because
great.
that was a question from Rosemary too.
Oh,
So we can move into those. I will put a screenshot of the slide
here,
right
we can go back
into
to
the.
sharing really quick. Let me stop
Yep.
sharing and we can share the.
Okay, let me do that. I'll share this really fast. Um, And so when we move into the LODs, we're now going to talk about where the context filters happen in between the context and dimensions is where you're going to see your fixed LODs. And also some of the reasons Sarah talked about with the top end filters and some of the conditional filters and sets we have not discussed. But then we can also talk about where include and exclude in LODs take place. And as we look at the LOD expressions, I don't know if this image would be helpful, Sarah, if you want me to
Yeah,
present
we can,
this. Or
yeah,
just
let's
I'm gonna
just
talk
talk
that
about
through.
LODs just in general really quick and then we'll come back to yeah, perfect. So level of detail calculations, kind of I always what I try to do with Tableau is I always try to find like the tagline of different functionality. And the tagline for level of detail calculations are or is is when you want to write a calculation that is at a different level of detail than your view. So, for example, you have a view that's at the region level and you want to sum up and find an average at the state level, right? You don't have state in your view, but you want to be able to write that calculation and roll it up to that region level. So the big thing, the thing to always remember the tagline is writing a level or writing a calculation at a different level of detail than your view. So um, in order to understand level of detail calculations, we have to understand what is level of detail. And that's kind of what this shot, the screenshot here is showing us. As we add dimensions to our view, the level of detail of the view becomes less and less aggregated. So, or the granularity gets more pointed, right? So if we just pull out sales or we just pull out GDP, that's totally aggregated. It's taking every single row in our entire data source and aggregating it up to one number. And as we add those dimensions, whether it be region or year or state, that breaks that number down into smaller pieces and makes it less and less aggregated or more and more granular. There are some really great resources on here to help with understanding LODs. I'm going to focus a little bit on the syntax just to kind of show you, but we're going to focus kind of on some tips and tricks with level of detail calculations and also how those fall into those order of operation, into that order of operations with the filters. So I'm going to steal it again.
Yep. Let me get out of here and stop sharing my screen. I will also fix the typo of Tableau that I had
Oh,
on one of
yes.
those things. I just noticed
There's so
that.
many vowels. Sometimes our fingers just get a little, you just want
So
to
that
press
is
all
now
of them.
fixed.
All right, great. Okay, let me go back to sharing my screen. So I created kind of a new sheet here, and it does, if you remember our sheet one, the Americas was very low because I had excluded the United States, and that's a big portion of the Americas. So the level of detail of this view is year and region. So we get a mark or a GDP amount for each combination of year and region. And what I might want to look at is what's my GDP or my average GDP per country within each of my regions. So if I just change this GDP to average, that is going to give me um, a average across my Asia in this particular year, right? All of my Asia rows within this particular year. And when we look at those values, or excuse me, let me back up. I got ahead of myself there. Um, when we change this aggregation to average, we can't control what that denominator is. It's always going to be at the row level. So whatever the lowest level of detail is in our data set, that is what that um, value is going to be. Now, if we want to start looking at our countries across our years, and we want to define something a little different than just row level, we have to write a level of detail calculation because we want to focus on country, even though we don't have country in our view. So a quick um, we could say fixed on country. We want to sum up our GDP per country. And then when we pull that into our view, oh, well, I have to pull the right field. This is why you should always make sure you remember what you named your things. Did I save it? Okay, we're going to try that
I
one
don't
again.
know that you did.
Or was
I
it left Calc 1?
Yeah, do you see it? Am I
No.
being, am I being crazy? Maybe.
I don't see it. You could type it in search, but I don't see it at
Okay,
all.
let's not. Let's just do it
Okay,
again.
let's do it again. Repetition is how we learn.
Yeah, country GDP and fixed country. There we go. And we're going to sum up our GDP. Great. Okay. Cool. Love that. So if I pulled this out and we looked at these two values, you can see that we have average GDP and we have our country GDP. And right now it's doing a sum, and I could change that to average. And we could see how these numbers are different, right? We have our average country GDP, which is in this for Europe is 4.4 trillion, quadrillion. I'm not entirely sure how big these numbers are, but a lot. And then we have our average GDP, which is that 4.6 number. If I formatted these the same, it might be a little bit easier. Very quickly, we can format, and you can see, yeah, you can kind of see how these numbers are different, right? When we're looking at these values, you can see that the average country GDP, 4.4 billion, is a lot more than the average GDP. Because if I'm fixing this just on country, our countries exist across many different years. And when we go back and we look at the order of operations, and especially with fixed, we're saying fixed on country, which is going to go across all years, all regions. Obviously, countries don't cross over regions, but they do cross over years. And it's going to give us that average. And that's why we're getting this really big discrepancy between the calculation that we wrote and our average calculation within each year. If we wanted to make sure, like we had in this previous, where we were excluding the UK and we were excluding the US, that fixed calculation is going to happen after context filters. So when we have something on context filters, that fixed calculation is going to take that into consideration. So I'm going to hit this with an average, and you can see that this average country GDP for Asia and for Europe is going to be really similar to those other numbers, but then we have this much lower number for the Americas because we have that context filter. So when we're using our fixed LODs, we have to make sure that we're taking those that order of operations into consideration. And if we don't want specific, in this case, countries, take it into consideration for that fixed LOD, we have to add them to context in order for that fixed calculation to see them. Otherwise, it's just going to go across the entire data set. It's not going to mind any of our filters because fixed happens before any of our other filters. Heather, can we go back to that, the order of operations just one more time
Sure
to just kind of
can.
solidify what
Abs-
I was just saying?
Absolutely.
Let me stop.
Oop, let's try it. Oh, goodness. Why would it do that? There we go. Try again. That is so interesting that it's taking me out. Let me do it this way. And here we go.
Try it a different way this time.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. So that's one of the big difference between our fixed LODs and our include and exclude LODs. And because those fixed LODs are happening after context filters, but before dimension filters, if we did not make our US country filter, if we did not set it to context, that fixed LOD would not see it. So that fixed LOD is going to happen before a dimension filter, and our country region is our dimension. But when we set it to context, that's going to run first, and then it'll run that fixed LOD. Whereas with include and exclude, because those two LODs take the level of detail of our view first, they do see those dimension filters and behave a little bit differently than our fixed LODs.
All right. I know that's a
Yeah,
lot. It
it was a
almost
lot
make
in a very
your
short period
brain
of time.
blow. LODs are hard to understand at first, but they're super powerful. And for me, I did not understand why LODs were such a big deal because they came out like within a few months of me learning Tableau. And so, it finally got to the point where I was like, why are these such a big deal? And I had to try to solve a problem without them. And it sucked. It wasn't good. So you'll, see some of these links that are in here. I really love the top 15 LOD expressions as well. One of Christie's favorite is the Last Data Bender has a three-part LOD series. So I linked you to the first one. And then if you scroll down, you'll see part two and part three. And then there is a white paper, but you will have to put your information to get to that. Knowing that we have some particular people on the call with questions, I'm actually going to skip around a little bit. And I know that we answered Rosemary's LOD calls, but I know Deneen had some questions around dendrograms and hierarchies. So I thought maybe we'll skip the dashboard actions for now. We've covered that in other ones, and Vanita's not here right now. So if we have time, we'll come back to that. But Christy, why don't I hand it over to you to talk more about creating more elaborate visualization. So a dendrogram is not your typical type of visualization. So maybe we can talk viz extensions and a little bit about those and then hop into dendrograms and then we'll move to hierarchies. Does that sound good?
That sounds great to me.
Okay.
Let me go ahead and get my screen share going on. Hello, folks. So let's see. How do we want to take a look at this? I've got I'm not even going to try saying this word. I have the big chart up on my screen, and this is pulled from the exact same link that Heather just shared with you. So first thing is a dendrogram type chart is absolutely buildable in Tableau. They are not easy. I did not build this one, but what I wanted to show you is this. If you go out to that Tableau public link and click on excuse me, didn't even pull that up, and click to download the Tableau workbook. So on Tableau Public in the bottom right-hand corner of every workbook, you've got a little download option. Well, once you download it, you can reverse engineer your data set. So, for example, if someone else has built something I like, I can go through and simply do a replace data source. And I say simply, but replace data source, when you have two data sources in, that lets you say, hey, swap everything out. So I just wanted to mention that part very briefly because that's one thing that you can do. On charts like this, that tends to be a little bit more difficult simply because it's often not straightforward data. There's often some underlying pieces that go into it that change up how the data is structured. It's something often known as data densification. I don't know if you've come across that term, but whenever you see these curves in Tableau, you can almost bet that somebody's done some underlying stuff to the data because Tableau doesn't naturally draw arcs. It doesn't draw curves. So you have to go in and use things like sigmoid functions to go through and get that to work. So I will add some links into chat when my section is over so that
We
we can.
already did. So
Thank you so
you're
much.
good.
So
Yep.
that you can see some of those details. So I did want to point that out. Um, but I hope y'all will allow me to take this in a slightly different direction because if I come on over, and let's make sure I'm in the right version of Tableau, perfect. If we come on over to our marks card and a brand new empty worksheet, we'll find that Tableau has introduced this really cool feature called Viz Extensions. And it was introduced in version 2025, so it's still relatively new. Has anybody on this call played with these yet?
Not, I
A
started to
little,
yesterday.
a little, yes.
Good for
Excellent, Anine. How did
me.
you find playing with these? How'd that work out
Um,
for you?
I didn't spend a whole lot of time because I was really trying to work on the dendrogram. But
Okay.
I have started taking a look at those Viz extensions, and I think I know which one that you're speaking of.
Oh, well, good. Then I was going to use that one as an example to show you because it's pretty darn cool. Now, the one thing is it doesn't have, I guess my understanding of the dendrogram is in showing the relationships, the length it is from something signifies different measure related items as well. The ones that I found that are custom built, or they're pre-built in Tableau, don't go to quite that depth, but they do kind of get us that network shape. So, what are we talking about, people? Well, a long-standing request in Tableau has been the ability to develop your own visualizations and basically put them in as formulas. And when Tableau started introducing all these accelerators and other pieces on the Tableau Exchange, one thing they added in is this concept of Viz extensions. So what a Viz extension is, it's something that someone else has gone through and developed and said, here, just use this. Now, when I click on Add Extensions, it's going to open up a window and give me all sorts of check boxes that are rather meaningful, the most important one being sandboxed. The reason I say that is that sandboxed extensions are going to work because they don't go outside of your server. They just stay in play nicely with everything else. However, extensions often have to be hosted. So if it's not sandboxed, those extensions often do need to be hosted if you're going to use them on server. And I'll leave that as a separate topic and share those out later, but we can take a look at how some of these free extensions can work in Tableau Desktop, even if you don't download and set them up to get hosted on server. So if you're looking to get PowerPoint presentations or something that you can interact with other people, this is a really great option without even worrying about that other side. So if we start, we go through, and a tree diagram is something fairly similar to the one that I shall never be able to pronounce. And if I open it up,
Dendrogram.
thank you. I'm just going to pause and let Heather fill that one in. But when you open up the extensions, it gives you a little bit of an example of what they are and gives you the ability to go out to the websites and see a little more detail about them. But when we click open, that's where the magic starts to happen because Tableau warns you, hey, when you're doing this, then there is the possibility that your data is being sent outside of your environment. So
Yeah.
you want to make sure that you check and understand how this works. Okay. Not all extensions do this, but you want to do your own research on it. They've got little indicators, but these URLs will give you fuller data on that, or fuller detail. So when we click OK and come in, we get this little pop-up that starts telling us what to do. Screenshot it, because the moment you start dragging and doing what it tells you to do, your instructions disappear. So this is telling you we've got to put things on dimensions, and then we have to click Format to set it up. So if I wanted to follow exactly the directions they have here, what we do is we start by grabbing one of our dimensions and we place it over here on detail. Notice how when you pick a viz extension, it completely redoes your marks card for just what you need. So when I drop category on detail, I have three random dots on my board. And if I take subcategory and drop that on detail too, Tableau connects them. And so we have a radial tree diagram, much easier to say. So this shows us the relationship between different things. If you're just trying to build out a network chart, an org structure, anything like that, so you can see those relationships. But we can also go through and say, hey, we want to see the magnitude of these pieces. Now, instead of the elongated structure that we saw on that first one, when we take our sales value and place that right up here on size, boom, now we can see the relative distribution of those sales values. So it defaulted to the radial. Gotta admit, I'm not a huge fan. This one looks like a Rorschach test to me, but when we click on Format Extension, this is where you get the options to change how this works. So my layout, for example, I can switch this into a horizontal or into a vertical layout, and notice that it's avoiding any structural changes to my underlying data.
Mhm.
So we do sacrifice a little bit as far as the ability to control the visualization, but I have to tell you, doing this in 3 clicks where I don't have to go through and learn how to write trig-based functions for me is an absolutely wonderful thing. And each one of these different options allow you to go through and decide exactly how things display. So, just like normal Tableau, what you place and where you place it matters. So, noticing that the order that my fields are here determines where they are in the hierarchy. So, if we're doing an employer structure, for example, you can have all your different levels just listed here, and boom, you've got a network diagram in Tableau.
And Christy, I want to point out at the bottom, some of your worksheets and even a dashboard in this one says dendrogram in it. So,
So, I have no excuse to not be able to say
but no, that's you can always have an excuse.
it.
But there is a dendrogram built in there that you could,
Oh,
backwards engineer and things too, Deneen.
yeah.
So,
Yeah,
um,
thanks. That tree structure, though, I know that one says it's sandbox. Has that been validated by Tableau or Salesforce?
So it's not, this one's not sandboxed. The only
Oh,
sandboxed extension, which also, what's the purpose that you're looking for this visualization? What do you
It
visualize?
truly is to display a hierarchy, right?
Gotcha.
okay.
Multi-level. So that dendrogram that you showed, it's great. It's single layer though, right? And
No.
so to go
oh,
into multi-layer or multi-levels of the hierarchy, which that tree
Well, you can do
structure
that.
gives, right?
Mhm.
Absolutely. Let me show
Yeah.
you.
But my concern is, like you said, the data potentially goes elsewhere. And, obviously we want to secure our data.
Now, the good news is it really varies from one extension to the next. So, some of the extensions, what you do is you have an option to host them on your own server. So it's not that the data goes somewhere else. It's that
hmm
you have to download and install a tiny little thing in your environment, either a web page that things ping or a tiny app on your server. But it really is specific to each Viz extension.
Okay.
Haven't researched this one fully.
And
Um,
this one did say no data, no access to
yeah.
full data, but I don't know what that means to any data, so
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, yeah, you may. There's one specific link that I found. Let me go out because if you're wanting to do this one on your own, there are, like I said, the data densification. It's great.
Yeah.
It works fine if it's static, but A, it kills your performance, and B, as your data changes, sometimes that data densification doesn't stay as clean as you want it to. So
Okay.
we can take a look at another topic for a second, but the data school is one of my favorite go-to sources for content. They have a blog post on how to do this type of diagram with one calculation instead of all the data densification, and I will absolutely pop that into chat here in just a minute.
Perfect. That's great. Thank you.
Mhm.
And this is a great lead in, Christy, to hierarchies because, Deneen, if you do want to drill down deeper into levels, it's really about building the hierarchy so those pieces can go there, or how you're dragging things in the order onto the view. So I do think you could get there. as well. So do you want me to share my screen about hierarchies, or do you just want to go right into hierarchies, Christy? What
Oh,
would you prefer?
I'm happy to dive right in. I feel like we've got a nice
Okay.
illustration of what a hierarchy is right here. Oh, and also I do want to say if you're doing network diagrams, it's a great thing I'd love to chat with you on because how you model the data underneath can make a real big difference in how easy or difficult this is. And it can be fairly easy to do with just a couple tables. So just wanted to call attention to that.
And
Uh,
we do have a public facing example we can post to that was a question we received at Tableau conference this year when we were on stage and we built a data set from that and one that we did with one of our clients. We might have a data sheet model, data model and an Excel spreadsheet that could work too, Christy. So we'll take a look at that together and Deneen will be sure to send you some more information on that.
I appreciate it. And just one more time, that particular viz that you were looking at, it was just called tree.
Yeah, so when I went into add extension, this one is tree diagram dash
Diagram.
free by La Data Viz. The big key to note on it is it's going to start as the radial chart, which I find a little off-putting. But when you go in and click that format extension, that's where you have the options to switch out the types.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
No
Of
worry.
course. Thanks for the question. You were challenging us too. We are like, oh, dendograms. What
But I got
is
to
a
show
dendrogram? So
I got to show off Viz extensions and my inability to pronounce long words. So don't worry.
luckily I'm married now, Christy. You'd never be able to say Lingenfelter. That was a
Oh
really
my
hard.
gosh.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. No wonder you can say hard words.
Right. I came out of the womb with that name. It was wrong to have to pronounce as a child. So
All
uh,
right, hierarchies. And one of those questions specifically was about geospatial hierarchies. So I want to take a look at a couple of different things. In Tableau, we have the joyous ability to be able to drag and drop basically anything we want out into the view to do beautiful, spectacular things. So I can go category and bring my sales down. And going back to that whole concept of level of detail, as I move my zoom bar to another spot on the screen, there we go. But as we go in, I could just keep dragging fields out to go deeper and deeper and deeper into all of this. Okay, so we're descending into the information. It doesn't have to be a one to many. I could have accessories in multiple different areas. We still have a hierarchy. Springfield exists in every state in the US. Okay. But what's nice is if your end users can do that same sort of interactivity. So in this particular case, I, as the developer, have to do it. But Tableau makes it very, very easy for us to give our end users the ability to do the same thing. So if I take my subcategory and just pop that right up on top of category, notice I just dragged it and turned it blue. When I let go, magic happens. So this is going to be my product hierarchy. Now you can see words I can't spell. We're just hitting all Christie's high spots today. So if we take a look, the moment we built that hierarchy, we get this little indent right here, and we get a little negative sign. So I can collapse and expand. And for my end users, if they're looking at the data the same way, well, they've got the ability to collapse and expand. Okay. So that's one of the nice uses of hierarchies. You may have seen they're already built into dates and other areas, but I don't want us to just stop there. Okay. Reason is hierarchies work very nicely with things like groups. So let's say, for example, that sure, we've got all these different categories, but I have different managers that these items go under, and I want to group or consolidate those by my managers. Well, I can go through and I can shift select a bunch of different items, and you get this little paperclip. And that paperclip says, hey, go ahead and build that group. So when I click my little group option, it collapses down everything I selected and built a new field that it put up here on rows. So I've got a new paperclip field over here on the left-hand side. Now, if I choose to, I can just right click on that thing that it changed, and we all know alias lets you change what something is called. So we're going to go ahead and give these to Bob. It's always Bob. So I can go through and keep collapsing all of these different hierarchies together, or excuse me, subcategories together. Or if I right click on my group, I can edit it from here. And that's going to let me see the things that are collapsed, the things that are not. And so I'm able to customize how these go together. Bob, Sal, why not? And then we'll go ahead and give some of these ones to Mary. Okay. So these groups now let me customize how the data goes together. And if I choose to, I can put everything not classified into another. And now I've got the ability to go through and drill down by those individuals as well. So these groups can simply be added into existing hierarchies. Notice I can just do it by dragging that field into the hierarchy area. And when I let go, well, now I can drill down from my subcategory and back up. So again, both I and my end users have that flexibility. Now, I spent a few minutes on the concepts of groups and hierarchies, but the question came in relation to geospatial data. So I'm going to make one more switch on over to a new sheet and notice that this hierarchy right here has fields that are geospatial data. So if we start off by placing country on detail, since that's a geographic field, when I let go, Tableau is going to drop that in place and say, silly, we only have data for the US. Luckily, I've got my handy dandy little plus sign and I can click that to expand down. And of course, my end users can have the choice to click and expand further if there are additional details in that hierarchy. So as we hover, here's the one thing I do want you to notice. It really doesn't expand out the same way at the geographic level. Because I don't see that plus sign quite as cleanly here, I'm not going to get as clean of a drill down from within the map. But my hierarchies, my groups come in handy in another way. Now, staying here, let's assume that we've got three different salespeople. Again, it's Bob, Al, and Mary, but instead of having different product categories, what they've got are different portions of the country that they manage. So if I come in and make sure that I've used my little lasso selection tool, I can go through and I can grab everything that they connect to. And by the way, I might do this even if I have a field in the data that separates out their territories, because that field, like my region field here, might not be a geographic field. And so it doesn't have the same spatial understanding of geographic data. But if I go through and I say, hey, I want to group these items, Tableau says, not a problem. We'll group our state and country information together. And when I click through, well, now Tableau weirdly shaded all of these dots blue and all the rest gray, because it did the exact same thing it did before when I built that group. It did my paperclip. But notice I've got a paperclip and a globe. So staying with this, if I keep on going through and I'm going to create one more group over here, so I'll group the information on this side. That's a little more colorful and noticeable. But what I really want to do here is tell Tableau, hey, show me the sales value for each one of those different regions. Well, sure, it's lighting them up in different colors, but no matter what I do on this side, Tableau's still totaling them up by state. And the reason is when Tableau built that group, it still kept the state in on detail. So it's still breaking that apart. But if I move state away, now that geospatial group fills in and I've got one value, my level of details now by those groups, and I can see all of the data at the aggregation level I want, regardless of the mark type that I make. So covered a bit of ground there. I hope that gave you what you wanted about hierarchies or geospatial data. Any other questions on that little bit?
All right. Well, based on the questions, the great news is everybody that attended today, we were able to get to their questions. We've had others that were submitted today, but we only really have like 6 minutes. So I am debating, do we go down the path of dashboard actions or would you go down the path of adding custom images to views? And I'm thinking I'm leaning towards dashboard actions because it ties in well with filters. Christy, is that something you can do in 3 minutes? If
Oh,
not, I say we move on to the end of the call. It's up to you.
Um, I absolutely can give an overview of the actions. Let me just ask a question to the group real quick. Those of you on the call, are you already using dashboard actions?
It's
Don't
a
want
great
to
question.
cover anything y'all already know.
I
I
am
am
look.
not.
Oh,
Okay.
yay. Then we need to cover this.
Yes, please.
And we could go into more details next month too, since it's going to get shortchanged a little bit
Okay.
as
Oh,
well. So I'll put in, Christy, the screenshot just of the different types of dashboard actions, filter, highlight URL, go to
yes.
sheet. I'll put that in the link. That is a question from Vanita, who was not able to join us today, but I'm sure we'll be watching the recording because Vanita does that. It comes often to our sessions.
All right, so dashboard actions in 3 minutes or less. I already have a dashboard. Sarah did an awesome job of going over the different ways we can use filters, but man, I'm not a fan. Because what's the point of having a little drop down that lets me pick one of these individual areas when I could actually just show them in my view and let my end users interact with this information? So that's what actions do. Literally, it tells us, hey, I'm going to interact with something in my dashboard and cause something else to happen. So the most straightforward action is our filter action. So instead of having my little drop down across the top, when I click on my dashboard and get this little funnel, I can click the funnel. And now when I click on anything in my view, it filters everything else. So this lets your end users see, oh, this data matters to me, not, let's check out EMEA and then decide if it matters to us or not. We get what indicates if we want to investigate or not right up front. So when we created that action by clicking our little funnel, Tableau went up to this dashboard area, and in our actions area, we'll find that we have filter one generated. When I click on that to edit it, we see all the primary components of this action. And so I'm just going to rename this one to market filter. The source sheet, we're talking cause and effect. So my cause is the worksheet I interact with. On my sales detail report, this dashboard, any interaction with my market sheet can cause something to happen. Now, by default, it does select, meaning you have to click. You can also choose to have it happen on hover, where you just move your cursor over and it causes the action, or menu, where you get a link in the tooltip. Do not ask me why they don't call that tooltip. So that's our source. That's where we're initiating it. And then the target is what's going to happen as a result of that, what's impacted. Well, we're filtering, so we know it's going to do a filter. But in this case, the default is all of our other sheets, and that when we unfilter or click again, it shows everything. Now you can refine it further down here, but as you can see, it works out fairly nicely already. And I don't even have to have those fields marked on my other worksheets. It's literally just filtering the data. So my final comment in the last 20 seconds, I think that I did want to show you one other action because I can come to dashboard actions. And from here, I have the option to add in more than just filtering. I do tend to love me some highlight actions because these help add some context to your dashboard. So I can call this a category highlight. And if I again start from one sheet, in my case, I'm going to start by the sales from category. And when I hover, I want that to impact just my product scatter plot down below. Again, leaving it with everything so it's not refined, but I'm going to warn you right now, and let me double check that I did this highlight right. It's happening on my hover. Okay. Spelling doesn't count. And when I come in and hover, something's happening, but it's not working perfectly. So I just wanted to make sure to call this piece up to point out that sometimes we do need to make sure we have the field we're sending over in play. So because the category field is the one that's calling forward my information, in this particular case, that highlight action works much, much better when I add that field in. So that was a just a little prelude to highlight and filter actions. I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Heather to close us out.
That was
Yes, I
amazing,
am using
Sarah.
action. Do actions get created another way as opposed to manually, like you just went through that capability?
The
Because I feel
only
like I'm using actions, but I've never used that place where you were, where you can do it manually.
the
You
only
maybe
Insta actions is a little funnel on the right hand side.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
if you fill in that funnel and it's dark colored in,
Mm-hmm.
then you know that that's been selected and created that dashboard action for you
Okay,
automatically.
because I mean, I have the
Yeah.
capability to click on something within a dashboard and everything else within that dashboard does something, some filtering or
Yeah.
what have you. So, okay.
Yeah, having that manual control is super powerful because you can
Yes.
choose which charts and things too. But the other advantage of dashboard actions is that filters have to go all the way back to the data source and filter row by row to decide
Mhm.
what to show, where a dashboard action happens locally on the dashboard. So from a performance standpoint, not only are you getting the information that shows you more information and how they're ranked and things, but you're also getting better performance. So that's one of the first things we often do as consultants when we're coming in. We make over people's dashboards to get rid of those filters as much as we can. So,
Sure.
good news is we already have topics we're going to cover next month based on things that were submitted. We do want you to know that we know we can't cover everything in these calls always. And so we are happy to have you schedule time with me, and I can schedule time with Christy or Sarah, whomever's the best person to come in. So we have a Calendly link there as well. And we want you to make sure you sign up for our October session. So this is something we're committed to doing every single month. That's typically on the third Wednesday of the month at the same time. So we'd love to have you come back, submit your questions in advance, or come with them live. We love to be able to see that. And again, Jordan's putting in the link right now. All of our links can be found that we presented today there. And just how blessed are we to have Sarah and Christy joining us. I think those were some of the best filter presentations and LODs I've seen, the fastest dashboard actions ever, and loved all the Viz extension talk today. So thanks to each of you for challenging us and teaching us like, hey, what is a dendrogram and when would I use that? And asking us questions that challenge us as well and grow our skills when we have to dive deeper into them. So we so appreciate you all being here. We will love to see you again next month. Until then, have a lovely fall and we'll see you in October. Bye, guys.
Thank you.